Tonight's big stories. Vice President Sara Duterte announces that 3 members of their political family are running for the Senate in 2025, including her father, former President Rodrigo Duterte. She also hinted the possibility that one of her brothers is eyeing the presidency in 2028.
The Senate looks into the events in Ayungin Shoal last June 17 and whether Philippine officials are, quote, flip-flopping on what to call the incident.
And 5 more Filipino athletes qualify for the Paris 2024 Summer Olympic Games, bringing the total number of delegates for Team Philippines to 20.
Welcome to the big story. I'm Gretchen Ho.
I'm Pauline Verzosa.
And I'm Shawn Yao.
Well, girls, I remember us talking about the move of the Vice President to step down from her post in the DepEd if it was in preparation for the upcoming elections. Well, today we got some news. Following her bombshell resignation from the Marcos cabinet last week, Vice President Sara Duterte drops yet another surprising announcement. She reveals that not 1, not 2, but 3 members of their political family will run for senator in 2025.
Si PRD, senator, yung kuya ko, si Paulo Duterte, yung congressman ngayon, senator, si Sebastian Duterte.
So tatlo ang Duterte next year for senator?
Yes, tatlo ang Duterte.
The Vice President made this revelation in an event in Cagayan de Oro City, but the surprises do not end there. The Vice President says her brother, current Davao City Mayor Baste, might run for president in 2028 while she plans to return as mayor of Davao City. Sara made it clear, though, that she will not be letting go of the vice presidency.
Now, after resigning from the Marcos cabinet, some of the Duterte's allies said VP Sara has now become the new leader of the opposition. However, the vice president belied this claim.
Wala akong pinag-usapan ngayon na politika. Sa tingin ko ay magkaibigan pa rin kami ni Pangulong Bongbong Marcos.
During that event, Vice President Sara was also asked about what she and President Marcos talked about when she handed in her resignation. Here's her response.
Sa ibang panahon, pag-uusapan natin yan. Sa ngayon, ang pag-uusapan natin ay ang transition na.
Ito talaga si Vice President Sara, no? Minsan matipid ang sagot.
Yes.
Pero kung gusto niya mag-drop ng bomb, no hesitation, she will drop the bomb.
Tuloy-tuloy pa.
Oo. And just for context, she was at an LGBTQIA event.
A pride event.
Yes, a pride event in Cagayan de Oro. So I think her statements sometimes can be kind of very, not very revealing. But she, during ambush interviews, ang daming lumalabas.
Full force nga itong House of Duterte. But another thing netizens noticed during her resignation speech last week was actually this scar on her neck.
Ang dami nga nagtanong.
Galing nga ba saan yan? Oo.
Maraming speculations and if it was from a surgery, diba, or an operation.
Or
Pero wait
something
lang,
else.
wait lang guys. Kasi meron siyang sagot dyan.
Oo.
In a now viral TikTok video. Natanong rin nga si Vice President Sara about that scar on her neck. Her answer, as usual, was short and sweet but seemed to insinuate something.
Sinubukan nila akong igurgur pero hindi sila nagtagumpay.
Sabi ng gurgur.
Okay, gurgur is a Bisaya word which roughly translates to ginilitan or to slash or slit the neck. And she was asked to explain this response of hers during today's event, again on the sidelines. Pakinggan natin ang sinabi ng ating Vice Presidente.
Hindi naman na siguro kailangan i-interpret yun, very straightforward yun. Tinanong ako kung ano yung sugat na nasa leeg ko at sinabi ko na sinubukan nila akong igurgur pero hindi sila nagtagumpay. Silang lahat.
Another blind item.
Mahilig sa hugot itong si Vice Presidente. Ano?
At saka
sa mga
parinig.
blind item.
Oo, blind item. Pero since wala siyang binanggit, syempre lahat tayo try natin hulaan. And if we can remember yung most recent na nakagit-gita niya, so to speak, no? Remember that tambalos-los episode between her and House Speaker Romualdez, and nagsimula ito lahat sa confidential funds na hindi siya pinagbigyan. Although yesterday, the House Speaker said na namimiss na raw niya ang dating unity team. We'll now be rolling a clip of what the House Speaker said exactly para hindi tayo ma-misquote, and then we will play back-to-back the reaction of Vice President Sara to that. Panoorin natin to.
We missed the closer interactions that we had during the campaign. But nonetheless, there's politics and there's personal, and we only wish the Vice President nothing but the best.
Sabi ni Speaker Romales na miss na daw niya yung unity niyo dati during election. And anong comment natin dito?
Well, hindi mali yun, wala siyang sinabi.
Wala. Oo.
Tumawa lang siya.
Alam naman natin, no, that the news is important because we do know that the Vice President is a front runner in surveys for the upcoming 2028 presidential elections.
Tama ka, Gretchen, yung trust and approval ratings niya are the highest, still higher than President Bongbong Marcos.
So let's unpack that, and to help us with that, let's bring in our first guest for tonight. We have Mr. Julio Tihanki, Political Science Professor from De La Salle University. Magandang gabi.
Good evening, Gretchen, Shawn, and Pauline. Thanks for having me.
Okay, Professor, 3 Dutertes in the Senate. Did this shock you? And do you see this as a way of shielding themselves from the ICC probe, or are you seeing something else here?
Well, this latest news and development only proves the observation that politics in the Philippines is all in the family. Diba? So the news announced by no less than the VP Sara herself is also straight out of yung tinatawag nating Duterte populist playbook, no? Yung disruptive politics, no? Yung medyo nakakayanig ng mga balitang ganyan. And of course, alam naman natin, we all know that the former president is known for his performative politics, no? And now that you've mentioned it, no, the daughter VP Sara is like the Cheshire cat, no? Matalinghaga palagi ang mga short comments niya, di ba?
Diba? So, very short, very sweet, at magtataka ka talaga. But ako, for me, Prof, mas malaking bombshell yung sinasabi niya about roughly the plans for 2028, which is that si Mayor Baste Duterte daw ang tatakbo. As we know, we didn't see this coming. Wala pa siyang early survey numbers at all. What do you think about that?
Well, there are several ways to read this latest development, no? Una-una, first we can see it as a political smokescreen, no, to cover their real motives, no? Remember, itong mga Dutertes are both on the defensive and on the offensive politically at this point in time, no? Perhaps this is just one of in a series, no, of political misdirection from their end, no? And second, they're still banking on the Duterte brand, which is still very potent at this point. Now, geographically, they can still count on the Visayas and Mindanao, and the former president and the VP herself remain popular despite the recent controversies. And third and lastly, it's possible that one of the Dutertes will run, no, for the Senate. No? Most likely, it's Mayor Baste. He's been trying to emulate his father in recent months. So, parang pinapatakam nila yung base nila, no? At tinatago kung sino talaga ang tatakbo, no? Kasi if you look at it, it would be politically unwise for them to all run in the Senate, no? And leave their kingdom unattended and defenseless in Davao, no? Remember, they're also facing a very tough challenge from their former ally, the Nogralises, no? And it's possible, no, na mag-ikot-ikot sila, pero in the end, no, si VP Sara pa rin ang kandidato sa 2028. Perhaps the father or si Pulong will run for the Senate. Basta it's parang nakatago pa rin yan.
Do you think nakatago talaga on that thought, Professor? Because hindi naman din sobrang rare na may mag-ama or, di ba, parent and child or magkakapatid na nasa Senado. We have two pairs right now of those. Although we know that Senator Cynthia is graduating, which would leave Mark Villar alone. But the Cayetano siblings are still there. So, wala naman yatang illegal, di ba? Tanggap naman nating mga Pilipino that that's how it goes. So,
in fact, it goes to show na yun nga ang problema. We have already normalized this kind of politics, no, in dynastic politics na tinatawag natin. Kasi nga in the Philippines, it is political clans and not political parties that are the building blocks of our politics, no? So na-normalize na yan, lalong-lalo na sa Senado. Alam nyo, no politician would even think about it 2 decades ago, immediately after the EDSA Revolution. Walang mag-iisip na magkamag-anak tatakbo sa Senado, no? So isang pangitain na baka talagang kailangan balikan natin at itulak talaga yung enabling law regulating political dynasties in the country.
Well, Professor, it is a numbers game, no? Ang politics, alam naman natin,
Precisely.
strength in numbers rin yan. And as
Right.
we mentioned earlier, marami pong nagulat dito sa announcement ni VP Sara. And isa na nga po dyan, si Senator Bato de la Rosa. And he
Right.
actually told 1PH, sa totoo lang earlier, that he was surprised but also happy about this announcement. We actually have a soundbite. Let's listen to this.
Medyo nabigla. Ngayon lang natin narinig yung balita. Yan. So, nabigla tayo. But anyway, para sa amin, masaya kami. Dahil kung totoo yan, hindi kami magkakaroon ng lonely campaign ni Senator Bongo. Iniisip kasi namin kami dalawa lang. Kung tatakbo sila, plus 3 na kami. So, marami-rami na. Masaya itong kampanya namin.
Well, like what Senator Bato said nga, no? Yun nga, dun pumapasok yung numbers game, the strength in numbers.
Right.
So, Prof, do you think 2025, the midterm elections, is shaping up to be an administration versus Duterte contest? Are they really the new opposition?
Okay, kasi on the downside, this announcement, no, while it highlights the Duterte brand, no, it can also be seen as a weakness, particularly on their party, no, yung tinatawag na ngayong PDP walang laban, no, kasi they dropped the laban name, no, so the PDP na lang sila. So they can't even complete the slate, no. So how the mighty has fallen, no, parang hindi na makabuo ng buong slate, and in fact, aminado rin si Senator Bato na yung 3 re-electionist sa partido nila malalagas pa, magiging 2 na lang sila. So parang this is a desperation, no, on their part siguro kung yun ang talagang iniisip na. Pero I don't think it's that, no. It's actually something deeper, no. May ano yan, no. May laro. Ngayon, again, political rule of thumb, no, dito sa Pilipinas, administration usually has the incumbency advantage in midterm elections. So mahirap bumangga, especially in a 6-year presidency, mahirap bumangga sa incumbent, lalo na sa midterms. No? Palaging yamado ang administration slate. Now, with regard to the opposition, there will be, I think, 2 blocks of opposition, the Dutertes and then the traditional mainstream opposition led by the coalition that supported VP Lenny's presidential campaign. But the irony is, mas marami pang mapapagkasunduan yung mainstream opposition at BBM administration kesa sa Duterte opposition at mainstream opposition.
Nagkakasundo na nga sila now, Prof. For
Yes.
all intents and purposes, we see them, yung mga so-called dilawan, they're agreeing. They're on very good terms with the administration. So what do we make of this? Kung parang mukhang, kumbaga na lumamya or parang na-dilute or na-water down yung ating opposition, does that not open a door for the Dutertes to claim?
Not necessarily, no? Kasi ang points of agreement is a matter of foreign policy, particularly with regard to our worsening relationship with China, and then the question of accountability with the supposed entry of the ICC in the Philippines, no, regarding the investigation of the war on drugs, no. So these are very, very important foreign policy issues that apparently the administration and the mainstream opposition have common grounds, no. Now, whether this will translate into an electoral alliance is another issue altogether, no. But in terms of politics at this point in time, what we're just seeing is that mas malapit ang mainstream opposition sa administrasyon kesa sa mga Dutertes.
Professor, speaking of numbers, what's curious to me is the numbers of Paulo and Baste Duterte. We do know that former President Duterte, malakas sa buong Pilipinas. Si Sara Duterte rin, mataas ang rating. Pero yung dalawa, ang alam lang natin, sa local, they have a strong hold on that. But when it comes to the national, do we have any sense of how they would fare? Especially if you have 3 Dutertes running for the Senate and you have only 12 to elect in the midterms.
Right. Again, it's a double-edged sword. One, it's relying on the potency of the Duterte name recall or the brand. On the other end, it might lead to confusion, and it might split their votes, Remember what happened to JD Ejercito and Jinggoy Estrada in 2019, Pareho silang natalo dahil nahati yung boto nila. But they managed to get their acts together and nanalo naman sila noong 2022. So, it can go both ways.
It seems to me this is just their family's response with the recent spate of attacks. But how about the ICC investigation? Would they gain anything if they do run and win Senate seats?
Of course. Kasi well, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm thinking that they will think that the father is thinking of immunity, while they are in office, while they are senators, So I think that's part of the game plan, And of course, if they are seated in the Senate, they will have another arena by which they can argue their case, and defend their position politically.
Balikan ko lang yung sinabi mo kanina about the populist playbook, Professor T. Hanky. Because earlier I was watching our sister program, Storycon, and they had Ronald Llamas, a former political advisor to President Noynoy there. He was saying na, kasi normally nga, ang pinupunto kung maaga ka masyado nag-announce, ano pa nga lang ba, 2024 pa lang, para sa 2028, usually natatalo. Pero ang pinoint out nila is that kung populist ka, such as President Erap, former President Erap, kahit isang mayor lang yata yung nasa partido nila, kumbaga yung brand is strong. So parang all the other, concerns about machinery, blah, 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 kumbaga na-etchapuera na yun, and it doesn't count. What are your thoughts on that? It's
good that you mentioned the Estradas, kasi nga, there's also the phenomenon of political or dynastic overstretch, And this actually happened to the Estradas in 2019. In practically all the positions they ran for both national and local, natalo sila. Natalo sila sa Maynila, natalo sila sa San Juan, natalo yung magkapatid sa Senado. At yung iba pang mga kamag-anakan nila, maski sa Pangasinan. Pangasinan ba? Si E.R. Ejercito, di ba?
Laguna.
Laguna, sa Pagsanhan pala, sorry. So, yun, natalo, na-wipe out sila. So, it's possible na magkaroon ng miscalculation din on the part of the Dutertes if they overstretch, they leave their kingdom in Davao unprotected, and they run, all of them will run for the Senate, then baka matalo sila.
Prof, I just wanted to get your thoughts on this also now. Is Baste Duterte the new Digong, or sinasabi nga nila, Digong 2.0, at hindi si Sara?
Again, it's possible, kasi, both Pulong and Baste are emulating their father's style, Yung populist style, the way magsalita, even yung intonation, di ba? It's everything, So they're both emulating their father. But I guess they are prepping Baste for a national position. He might be the one to run for the Senate. They might consider him as a backup for the presidency in 2028. All of these are now at play, and it is possible na dyan patungo yan.
Professor, alam naman natin na malaki talaga ang naitulong ni VP Sara Duterte sa candidacy ni President Marcos back in 2022. Gusto ko lang malaman kung may naririnig po ba kayo, kung meron sila naging internal agreement when it comes to the next elections to come. Because for me, just seeing things play out, parang if I were the vice president, I'd feel betrayed. by the incumbents, by the administration, given what has happened over the past months. I mean, what's happening now is this exposing their anger towards what has happened. At meron bang hindi natupad? Meron bang napag-usapan?
Yeah.
May naririnig ba kayo?
Right. Alam nyo, dito sa bansa natin, we're a country of political cliches, no? And isa sa mga political cliches na paborito natin, that in politics, there are no permanent friends or enemies, only political interests, no? So sa larangang politika at sa mga nakikita natin ngayon, no, mukhang ganun nga, no, na ironically ang first majority president under the post-Marcos era is a Marcos, no? And it was made possible by the unity, no, ang pagsasanib ng pwersa ng mga Duterte at ng mga Marcoses. Of course, even nung pagkapanalo ng Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte, malaki rin ang naitulong ng mga Marcos. Pero sa mata ng isa't isa, bayad na yon nung pinayagan ni Pangulong Duterte ang paglibing ng ama ng mga Marcos sa libingan ng mga bayani. So it's another political deal altogether itong 2022. So siguro, may mga naipangako na hindi na-deliver, kaya dyan nagsimula ang alitan na ngayon ay mukhang all-out animosity na. This is a, kumbaga, all-out animosity between the two former allies.
Ito pa, Prof, no, speaking of animosity, US versus China, sa nakikita kong mga developments, ito personal lang sa akin, but I wanted to get your thoughts. Kumbaga, everybody knows Team Duterte is allied with China. Kumbaga, ganun yung team up, diba? Tapos yung Team Marcos is allied with the United States. Ngayon, we also know and we have numbers from surveys showing na mas pabor talaga ang mga Pilipino o kumbaga mas kampi sila, quote-unquote, sa United States. How will this play out sa election? How can the Dutertes leverage kumbaga ang perceived good relationship sila with China to help them win next year and maybe all the way to 2028?
Yeah. Kasi nga magkaiba yan, no? Sa mata ng publiko, no, wala sila, maliit ang tiwala nila sa China at malaki ang tiwala nila sa bansang Amerika. Pero pagdating sa mga politiko, no, mas mataas ng kaunti ang kanilang tiwala sa mga Duterte na kumpara sa mga Marcos, no, sa mga recent surveys na nakikita natin. Ngayon, ang mangyayari dito, itataya ba ng mga Duterte itong political capital nila sa publiko para idepensa ang interes ng China? Yan ang magiging tanong, no? At kung gawin nila ito ba ay magiging sanhi ng kanilang tuluyang pagbagsak at pagkawala ng political capital nila sa tao ng bayan? So, yan ang isang dapat isipin natin. Kaya sa banda naman sa mga Marcos, no, ang nakikita natin kasi ngayon, no, ang lalo na si BBM, no, is actually playing what is known as the politics of redemption, no. Gusto niyang ma-redeem ang brand ng mga Marcos, no. And in fact, he is emulating the early Marcos, no, yung naunang anyo ng kanyang ama, yung medyo democratic na cold warrior na pro-US na security-oriented. So ganun ang postura ngayon ng ating Pangulo, no, trying to emulate the early Marcos, not the latter Marcos na naging dictator, but rather the cold warrior na Marcos. No? So these are the two narratives at play at titignan natin kung hanggang saang political capital ang kaya nila at gusto nilang itaya para dito sa mga naratibo nila.
But can Filipinos really attach West Philippine Sea issues or other issues to the elections? I mean, di ba nakikita natin sa survey na minsan, iba yung stance ng isang politiko tungkol dito sa issue na to, nadadawit sa ganitong skandalo, pero malakas pa rin pagdating sa approval ratings. I mean, do you think that it will affect somehow the upcoming elections?
Well, kung araw-araw nating nakikita kung paano tayo wina-water cannon at paano tayo binubuli at ngayon may nasaktan na sa isa sa mga kawal natin, talagang lalala pa ito, no? Lalo na sa mata ng publiko, no? And with social media, no, na pag naging viral to at na-amplify pa to ng social media, medyo dehado yung mga magdedepensa sa interest ng China. But of course, on the other end, no, ang sinasabi naman ng iba, no, lalo na sa Duterte camp, is ayaw nila ng gera. At bakit tayo nakikipag-away? Parang nakikipagpasalubo tayo.
Okay, Prof.
Ibang storya naman yan. No? So, at alam naman natin na hindi sa atin nagsisimula ang gulo.
Okay, balikan natin yung statement ni Vice President Sara earlier today. Ang sabi no, ay balak niya ay bumalik na lang bilang mayor, bilang alkalde ng Davao City.
Yes.
Would that be a smart move for her bilang siya nga yung pinakasikat ngayon sa kanilang magkakapatid, apart from her dad, of course? Ang sabi is payo daw ito ng kanyang mom. Would this be a good idea? Especially since nabanggit mo nga no, that they're kind of in a turf war with the Nograleses. Just for the benefit of our viewers, parang binigay kasi, give up nung mga Nograleses yung kanilang distrito para kay Paulo Duterte nung kasagsagan nung rule or nung administration ni PRRD. Ngayon, the Nograleses are seen to be fighting for that, their district, to get it back. What are your thoughts on that gulo naman no, dyan sa race na yan sa Davao City?
Yeah. So this news has been going around, especially in Davao, since last year, no? Kasi nga medyo malakas nga ang challenge ng mga Nograleses na actually long-term nemesis din ng former President Rodrigo Duterte nung mayor pa siya. No? Although nagkaroon sila ng reconciliation under the presidency of Duterte, no? At ngayon they're back at each other's throat, no? Baka doon nang galing yung gurgur ni VP Sara, no? So they're really at each other's throat, no? So one possible play is for her to go back, and nababalitaan na rin yan last year pa na baka isa sa mga options niya bumalik na lang siya sa Davao at doon na lang tumakbo ng mayor and let the other Dutertes, the brothers, take her position. Pero that would be politically unwise kasi nakaupo na siya. So she's just a heartbeat away from the presidency and anything can happen, di ba? So, kumbaga, and again, this time borrowing naman from GMA's playbook, no? For as long as you're in the vice presidency, no? You're a heartbeat away from the presidency. So, ano yan no? Parang no? Unahan sila, no? Unahan sila, no? Kung ano man yung plano nila sa isa't isa, mag-uunahan sila.
Right, mukhang mahaba-haba pa tong laban na to. We hope to have you back
tayo
here.
sa October.
Yes.
Before October.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Professor Julio Tihanki, Political Science Professor from De La Salle University.
We're going to take a quick break for now. Right after that, China responds to the June 17 encounter in Ayungin Shoal, telling the Philippines to stop infringing on its rights and to, quote, stop misleading the world. That and more when we return. Keep it here.
You're still watching the big story here on One News.
Senators sought more clarity into the June 17 incident in Ayungin Shoal. Mayan Los Baños has the report.
Hindi siyang may tawag na aksidente, ma'am. Intentional, ma'am.
Okay.
Intentional yung pagbangga, pagbutas, pagsira.
This was how Philippine Navy Seaman First Class Jeffrey Facundo described the most recent harassment by Chinese forces in Ayungin Shoal. He was the soldier who lost a finger during the encounter last June 17. Facundo told senators in a hearing today how the Chinese Coast Guard quickly swarmed them as they were about to reach the BRP Sierra Madre. Facundo said their boat was rammed twice and with such force that on the second attempt, his finger was severed.
Ngayon, yung rib ng kalaban, ma'am, dito sa kaliwa.
Oo.
Umangat po, ma'am. Pumatong sa rib natin. Tapos yung kill niya, yung ilalim po na matulis na nung pagbangga po na ano pa ako out of balance, na tumba. Ngayon, ma'am, yung rib na to, yung sana ako bumagsak, doon rin siya bumagsak po, ma'am.
For the DFA, China's actions in Ayungin runs counter to the agreed policy between President Bongbong Marcos and Chinese President Xi Jinping.
To our counterparts, that was really incomprehensible how the delivery of basic necessities to our troops on the BSP Sierra Madre could be considered a provocation that would justify an increased level of Chinese actions. And so, therefore, we believe their actions only intensified and escalated tensions. And certainly something we should be concerned about.
With this, some senators suggested having a military-to-military discussion between the Philippines and China regarding the dispute at sea. But Defense Chief Gibo Chodoro had this to say.
None, ma'am, during my time. They have a tendency of using the talks against us. They have not proven a level of good faith that would warrant our sensitive department to talk to them.
Meanwhile, Chodoro was also asked about the changes in the statements characterizing the June 17 incident. Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin earlier made headlines for saying the encounter was probably a misunderstanding, something Chodoro would later on clarify as not a misunderstanding and neither was it an accident.
Litong-lito na ang mamayang Pilipino sa naririnig na parang paiba-iba naman ata tayo. Nasabi na ni General Browner, piracy ito. So he was able to conclude that. Why did the ES Bersamin conclude something completely different?
No, he did not conclude, ma'am. If you notice, being a Chief Justice, he used the terms probably, and he wanted to make sure of his facts.
Ano ba nangyari dyan? Parang walang proper verification, sinalang siya sa presko, nagsalita siya, ngayon linalaglag ng lahat. Anong klase yun?
Hindi ho naglalaglag, but there's no intention to do that. He's our primus inter pares, naturally. But I'm just explaining the context.
The hearing continued in an executive session with senators hoping to get answers on more sensitive matters involving national defense and security. Reporting for News 5, Bean Los Baños, we are One News.
Now, China's Foreign Ministry, or Ministry of Foreign Affairs, has again asked the Philippines to stop making provocations after the June 17 incident in the South China Sea. Noting that the merits of the maritime disputes between China and the Philippines are very clear, China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson Mao Ning said the Chinese side has spoken on what actually happened and what its position is many times. Mao also made it clear what China's message is to the Philippines. She said, quote, stop infringing on China's rights and making provocations and to stop misleading the world. Mao also spoke about Defense Secretary Gibo Teodoro's pronouncements on the incident, calling it an aggressive and illegal use of force. She called on the Philippines to return to the right track of properly settling maritime differences through negotiation and consultation as soon as possible, and work with China to uphold peace and stability in the South China Sea. Let's now discuss this issue further with our second guest. Let me bring in Professor Aris Arugay. He is the chairperson over at the Department of Political Science in UP Diliman, and he joins us via Zoom this evening. Prof, thank you so much for taking the time to joining us tonight. How would you analyze the recent incident on June 17 at Ayungin Shoal? The seemingly contradictory press conferences and statements that came out after that, ending with today's personal account by Sergeant Jeffrey Facundo, whose finger got cut off.
Thank you for having me. I think the latest incident reveals two things. First, that China will not back down in terms of its positioning in the West Philippine Sea. We've seen that not only is it not de-escalating, but it's actually intensifying its presence and its inability to tolerate the Philippines Transparency Initiative. It not only is now using what I would call really borderline coercive actions, including injuring one member of our armed forces. We're also seeing that this is a way for China to really put a lot of pressure in our Philippine government because it feels the effects of the transparency initiative of the Marcos Jr. administration. But second, I think what is also being very clear is that, and we've seen this before, is that China is also testing the resolve of the Philippine government. And unfortunately, the multiple interpretations or the diverging, some would say, versions of what transpired and the different versions that we've seen, hopefully now being rectified by the Marcos Jr. administration, also tells you that China wants this dissonance to be able to, put some cracks or weaknesses on what should be a Philippine unified position on this issue.
Okay, Professor, taking a look at the response of government, tama si Shawn, no? Medyo nakakalito. Iba-iba yung sinasabi. For example, E.S. Bersamin said that this was probably a misunderstanding or an accident, which was clarified by Defense Secretary Gibo Chodoro, saying that this was actually intentional. After going on the ground, the president having a different tune to this. And there was even a proposal by the National Maritime Council to announce RORE missions. And if you take a look at it, parang ang gulo eh. They seem so disorganized. Was the suggestion supposed to be made in internal meetings? Was that supposed to be announced in the first place?
O baka dapat di na sila nag-presko nung Friday, nung Monday na lang?
What's your read into how the Philippine government responded to June 17?
Actually, we've seen this before, no? During the previous administration. Remember, there was a ramming incident in 2019. Ganun din, no? Iba-iba yung versions. And ako, I would not really put a lot of credit to the Duterte administration because very accommodationist naman yung policy nila towards China. So, in fact, hindi naman natin ina-expect yung administration na yon. But in this administration, I was quite surprised na nagbago ulit yung the way they respond to certain incidents in the West Philippine Sea, because I distinctly remember early this year when there were certain incidents, mas maayos at mas disiplinado yung communication, no? Isa lang yung presko, nandun lahat yung officials from DFA to PCG to DND, isa lang yung nagsasalita. Pero mukhang, yun nga, tama yung observation nyo, parang bumabalik ulit tayo dun sa napakadaming gustong mapakinggan yung boses nila. There's no disciplinary communication flow. And therefore, in fact, unfortunately, marami nakakakita nito, no? This is all covered by media. And internationally, hindi maganda yung nagiging interpretation on how the Philippine government acts when it's supposed to have a unified stance, not only on our policy, but on how we interpret events.
So, bottom line, does this show some sort of weakness? Can this be mistaken as capitulation? Because I believe that's the last thing that Filipinos want.
Definitely. I think in the end, hopefully, the lessons could be learned no, from this incident, that there should be, particularly in the executive branch, no, kasi ang sistema naman natin, hindi katulad sa China na over-centralized, no? Meron tayong legislature, meron tayong executive, may judiciary tayo. Pero sana man lang sa executive, no? Isa lang yung linya nila and everyone toes the line. Lalo na ngayon, dati kasi may National Task Force on the West Philippine Sea. Ngayon meron ng National Maritime Council when it's supposed to somehow really deliver coherence, no? In policy, in pronouncements. Kasi the more that we communicate, nakalat, iba-iba yung versions, we're actually giving, empowering and giving more points to the one who is challenging, no, our in the West Philippine Sea, no, sa atin sa Pilipinas. So a tighter control over the steering wheel, no, a tighter disciplined communication of events, and sana, no, mag-usap-usap sila siguro. Sana maganda magka-group chat sila, no?
GC.
Oo. Magka-GC sila kasi na pwedeng gamitin yun na against government when supposed to be the world has witnessed about how morally upright the Philippine position is, no? We're getting a lot of solidarity. We're supposed to use that leverage, no?
Okay,
in order
Prof.
to improve our posturing in the West Philippines.
Prof.
Hindi yung
Alice?
ang kino-communicate natin kalat.
Exactly. Pinoint out rin niya ni former Soljan Hilbay. Na-interview namin siya dito nung naglabas siya ng statement na sabi niya dapat daw may isang point person ang tawag niya for West Philippine Sea / South China Sea issues. What do you think of that proposal? Would that really solve it? And kung sang-ayon kayo sa suggestion na yun, exactly, sino at saan siya manggagaling? Mukhang mahirap maghanap ng perfect candidate for that.
I mean, let's observe how China is doing it. There's only one who is speaking. Pinakita nyo, Foreign Ministry. That's it.
The DFA, it's
Pero
been pointed out that the DFA has been sidelined here.
They've been silent because some analysts say this is a defense issue. Pero pagtatrabaho rin ang DFA sa diplomatic side. But you're right to point it out. But as we always discuss off-camera, me and my co-anchors, ang lagi kong pinopoint out, kasi naman, obviously, Communist Party of China, they would really have very strong pillars, very strong statements, at hindi magbabago yan kahit 50 years na. I guess it's I don't want to say flaw, pero kumbaga part na yan ng character, ng free speech, bilang demokrasya tayo. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, totoo naman, no? If it's a defense, pero ang ano kasi dito, the West Philippine Sea issue, no? Sa tingin ko dapat talaga politics stops, no, at the water's edge, meaning hindi dapat nakikita yung dissonance among government agencies and institutions. Mahilig sabihin ng gobyerno na dapat whole of government approach, no? But that goes also to communication. So, kahit sabihin na nating defense matter siya, yung communication flow dapat maayos. And I think if it's our DFA who is speaking, then klaro that ang pinanggagalingan nito, diplomasya.
So do you think
napopoliticize?
Do you think, Prof, napopoliticize itong issue more than it should be?
Oh, definitely. I mean, at the moment, I think, no, unlike before in our history, foreign policy has already trickled down to domestic politics. I think it's even the polarizing issue among our political elites nowadays, no? Dati ang foreign policy, malayo yan sa sikmura, pero malayo yan sa consciousness ng ating mga kababayan. Pero nakita natin dito na hindi Kasi yung West Philippine issue, hindi yan tulad nung sinabi nung nakarang administrasyon na tubig lang. It has something to do with our energy security. No? Maubusan na yung gas sa Malampaya. It has something to do with food security. But it has also something to do with what is ours. Anong gustong ituro ng mga gusto na, pabayaan na lang natin yung China. What is it teaching our children? Na okay lang magpabuli kahit nasa tama ka, no? So I think, in the end, no, this issue has gone simply beyond na, we can just allow China kasi total naman makikinabang tayo sa China economically. I think that ship has sailed. Kung ang pakinabang naman, pogo, I mean, at the end, I think we really need to think what we are trying to sacrifice here. Because at the end, the West Philippine Sea is for our future generations, for other Filipinos who deserve to enjoy what is ours by international law.
Prof, we're running out of time, but just really quickly, going back to the statement of China to stop provoking them and to settle our issues through diplomatic relations. Is this what we should do? How should we approach China, having all those constructive dialogues? Is that possible po?
Yung sinabi ng spokesperson, no, I think that's gaslighting par excellence. Kasi parang binabaliktad talaga nila yung kalagayan dito. If you would look at all the videos, yung mga naputulan tayo ng daliri, yung naram tayo, yung water cannon tayo, and yet we're the ones using force. When they're saying that they're allowing humanitarian missions, no? So pag hindi na natin in-ensure na hindi babagsak yung Sierra Madre, hindi na yun nila iaalaw kasi hindi humanitarian yun. But okay lang yung water and food. So the more that China sets the terms, the more that we're actually ceding them our sovereign rights. So let's not play into China's game. Ang importante dito, no? Klaro yung resolve natin. International law is on our side. Sabi nga ni retired Justice Carpio, hindi tayo matatalo in terms of batas. No? Kaya lang natatalo tayo because of hard power, because of muscle, because of China's military power. No? Pero sa international relations naman, hindi lahat nadadaan doon eh. No? At pinakita natin yon. So I think in the end, the Marcos Jr. administration must continue to chart the course that it has started. Kasi if ngayon pa tayo magpapalit ng positioning, no? Ngayon pa tayo magbibigay ng accommodation sa China, then I think we'll lose all reputation, not only domestically but internationally as well.
Alright, wala na tayong oras for tonight, Professor Aris, pero I guess ganito na lang, no? Usap tayo ulit. After nung next Rore mission, tignan natin how that will play out. Oo, nakakabitin talaga, pero marami pa to at mukhang mahaba-haba pa tong usapan. Thank you so much for your time tonight, Professor Aris Arugay, Chairperson at the Department of Political Science, UP Diliman. Thank you.
The Senate panel on foreign relations also held a hearing on the alleged propaganda against COVID-19 vaccines manufactured by China. Its chairperson, Senator Amy Marcos, said it should be verified whether there was misinformation that could have affected vaccine rollout during the pandemic.
We must verify if the anti-vaccination and misinformation campaign was indeed orchestrated by the U.S. military. If verified, there is also a need to further determine the ramifications of the action of the U.S. military, any potential breach of international law, and any possible legal recourse available to the Philippines, considering that such anti-vaccination and misinformation campaigns threaten national security and, more importantly, the health of Filipinos.
Today's hearing was based on a Reuters report stating that the U.S. military ran a secret anti-vaccine campaign to discredit China during the pandemic. Senators asked former Health OIC Maria Rosario Vergere about the disinformation campaign against Sinovac at the time. Vergere said they did monitor random cases of propaganda against the Chinese vaccine, although she said the DOH has been consistent in informing the public about the efficacy of vaccines.
We have been monitoring this kind of social media issues where there was this kind of issues raised by the people or population, and we tried to address this by doing some form of directed town halls and assemblies so that we can better inform our citizens.
Well, the Senate also invited one of the medical resource persons that Reuters spoke to for its report, and here's what he had to say.
I can't speak directly for anyone, obviously, in the Philippines or in Central Asia or anywhere else in the world. But I think this was really disinformation. But I think that the way it sounds to me is this disinformation about the Chinese Sinovac vaccine, which again was approved by the World Health Organization for use in countries around the world. Well, the disinformation was, it sounds to me, to have been intended to make people hesitant to take the vaccine.
Ito, alam ko guys, talagang papatapos na yung newscast pag medyo lumalabas na yung good news. So here's some good news. However, this does not apply to everyone, only to some Maynilad customers in Caloocan who are all set to receive rebates on their water bills due to poor quality of water supplied in their area. Affected water service connections will receive 530 pesos and 69 centavos in rebates on their water bills for the month of July. If their bills will not hit this amount, the difference will be carried over to the following month. Now, this amount is based on the around 2 million peso penalty imposed by the MWSS on Maynilad after they found that water they supplied in the affected areas was contaminated or had a high level of coliform. Coliform is a kind of bacteria found in soil or plants. The MWSS estimates that almost 4,000 service connections in 14 barangays in Caloocan were affected. Maynilad and MWSS clarified, though, that the incident was isolated and has since been addressed.
Normally po, nangyayari po na nagkakaroon ng contamination, hindi po galing sa planta. No? Kasi we ensure that yung gagaling po sa planta ay pumapasa sa ating pong standards for Philippine National Standards for Drinking Water. Nagkaroon po ng contamination sa distribution system natin, no? And that is normally because of leaks. Safe po ang tubig ng Maynilad. Ina-assure po namin yan sa inyo.
Even more good news by the end of the newscast. 5 more Filipino athletes are set to compete in the upcoming Olympic Games Paris 2024. Earlier in the day, Pinay lady golfers Bianca Pagdanganan and Dottie Ardina booked their respective slots in Paris 2024. Pagdanganan and Ardina made it to Paris after staying inside the top 60 of the women's Olympic rankings that ended on Monday. The 26-year-old Asian Games bronze medalist was ranked number 35, while Ardina placed at 55th in the International Golf Federation ranking, enough to be part of the 60 golfers seeing action in the French capital. This will be Pagdanganan's second straight Olympics, while Ardina will make her Olympic debut. Filipina-Japanese judoka Kiyomi Watanabe likewise will make a comeback on the Grand Olympic stage after making it through one of the 2 continental quotas reserved for Asia in the women's category for the 63-kilogram division. Watanabe, ranked 92nd in the world, is joined by China's Tang Qing in securing the other Asia quota, where the top 17 automatically qualify to the Olympic Games. Only 1 athlete per country can make the cut per weight category and gender. And to round out the day, Filipino tankers Kayla Sanchez and Jared Hatch are added to the roster of the Philippine Centennial team after making it to the Olympics just in time. Sanchez and Hatch were nominated for the 2 allocated quotas under the universality rule in swimming. Sanchez, who recently joined the Tokyo 2020 Olympics for Canada, will participate in the women's 100-meter freestyle, while Hatch is qualified for the men's 100-meter butterfly. Komplikado
Napakahaba nung good news mo.
Komplikado yung
Ang importante
Olympics
naka-qualify sila.
Yeah.
Pero wait, clarify ko lang sa inyo since I know avid sports observers kayong dalawa yung term talaga. Ito ba yung biggest delegation ever that we have?
Hindi, parang mas malaki nung
Tokyo
2020.
So
Tokyo
right now
2020.
at 20 athletes. Pero pwede pong madagdagan.
Yes.
Pwede pa.
Pwede pa.
So naantay pa natin.
And the POC is estimating na more than 20 talaga yung...
Hindi ba 25 tayo no Tokyo?
I think
Parang
so.
Sa
ganun,
25.
parang,
So, okay, so let's hope we get more than 5. Pero 25 ang estimate nila.
Yeah, more than 20.
More than 20. Okay, so may pag-asa pa. We'll see how that fares for our athletes who have yet to qualify. But for tonight, that's it from us 3 here at The Big Story.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for tuning in and have a good night.